Welcome to The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. Here's your host, the biggest record nerd of them all, Nate Goyer.
Well, hello, everyone. It's Nate. Welcome to episode 548 of The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. And dear people, I'm going to be sharing an incredible episode today, a conversation with Paul Leary and King Coffey of Butthole Surfers, who are currently celebrating the release of their lost album, After the Astronaut, recorded some 3 decades ago when they were at an absolute commercial high. The album was rejected by Capitol Records, which became them finally being dumped by the label altogether, and this record has been locked away for decades, languishing until 2026. You'll hear the full story today. In fact, we cover a lot of ground, from the early days of the band at Touch and Go, to the signing of Capitol Records, working with John Paul Jones, and of course, we talk about that stratospheric hit Pepper and the high expectations that that song created. And finally, to Capitol kicking them off the label and locking away the lost album After the Astronaut, which is finally seeing a release in June of 2026. You could pre-order your copy today at sunsetboulevardrecords.com. That's Sunset Boulevard. You know how you shorten that. I put the links in this episode page. You can go right to it and grab your copy. Today, we also talk about the Butthole Surfers documentary, The Whole Truth and Nothing But, and when we're going to see that available around the world. There's been some screenings around, but when can those of us outside of some of those major centers be able to watch it in the comfort of our own homes? They talk a little bit about that today, so strap yourself in for this incredible conversation with Paul and King. And by the way, for fans of the band, we recently had Gibby on the podcast, episode 509. And of course, you can follow this podcast anytime and get access to hundreds of other incredible artists talking records, music, and more, including Greg Ginn of Black Flag and SST Records. He joined us episode 547. Brett Gurewitz of Epitaph and Bad Religion, episode 500. Michael Girard of Swans, episode 498. Movie director Kevin Smith and Josh Roush talking punk rock cinema, episode 516. We even had Zach Wilde on the show a few weeks back talking about the last days of Ozzy and what's next, episode 544, and literally hundreds more conversations. Follow for free in your podcast app. Scroll, download, listen, and enjoy. Alrighty, let's get Paul Leary and King Coffey on the horn to talk about After the Astronaut and lots more. This week on the Vinyl Guide, we are welcoming Paul Leary, King Coffey of Butthole Surfers. We're celebrating the soon-to-be-released Missing Link After the Astronaut on June 26th. Guys, welcome to the show. Very exciting to finally have this thing see the light of day. How are you guys feeling about it?
It took long enough.
28 years, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting because like it was a record that we liked at the time. It was really fun to make, and then like the floor fell out underneath us, and like all of a sudden it turned into like an ordeal. But the process of making it was really fun, and like I liked so many of the songs on there, and it was a cool record to make. So I'm glad it's finally coming out, at least the way we intended it to come out.
So let's go back to that time. This is the late 90s. Butthole Surfers found themselves with this hit. I mean, Pepper was on the radio around the country, videos on television. It was a very strange circumstance the band found themselves in. Is that a fair assessment?
It was strange ever since we signed to Capitol Records. That was like, I thought we were on Candid Camera for years. I was waiting for something to pop out from behind the bushes and say it was all a joke. And then it turned out it was a joke.
Because Touch and Go and even Alternative Tentacles, they'd put up with your guys', but when it comes to Capitol, that seems to be a different set of expectations.
Yeah, they didn't need us.
What was it? Do you know kind of the story of kind of how they discovered Butthole Surfers and how you came into their fold?
When we signed with Capitol, their president at the time was Hale Milgram, who was a real music guy. And he liked the Butthole Surfers. He came to our shows and he wanted us on their label. And so we were on Capitol. And then as what always happens in the record business, he got fired and replaced by Gary Gersh. who was not so into the Butthole Surfers, and that was that.
Oh, okay. So you guys really had it wasn't just an opportunistic thing. You really had fans inside the upper echelons of Capitol that knew you and believed in what you guys were doing.
There was also some math to it as well. I mean, like in '92, I think when we got signed, we were the highest grossing independent rock band in the U.S. I mean, we as far as like our tours were going, and we definitely had a following. So like on paper, it made sense for a record label to pick, like a major label to pick us up. But unfortunately, we were called the Butthole Surfers, and we are the Butthole Surfers. So it's kind of like the pros and cons. It's kind of why maybe it took a maybe we signed a record label like maybe a decade later than we might have. But it was cool. We told ourselves, like Capitol's cool. I mean, it's like one of the great American labels, and we have complete control. That's what we were telling ourselves. We have complete control. It's our music. No one's going to change the music that's on there. If they want to slap their logo on the back of the record and distribute it better, great. Bring it on. So we came in with high hopes, and it went well. I mean, for the first few years, I mean, until we got a hit. Then all of a sudden, we were viewed in the company as being a potential hit makers, and then we had to follow up a hit, which was never our bag anyway. We weren't really hit makers, but we tried really hard to make a hit, and it was a drag. Maybe I'm cutting to the chase here, but I think we kind of let off steam by making After the Astronaut for like. I think we were kind of going back to our art roots in a way, making this kind of a fucked up record and having fun with it and playing with samplers and keyboards and computers and stuff. And it was a really fun record to make. But Capitol begged to differ slightly.
So Pepper, that was just constructed organically. Was there any pressure or understanding from the label about having something that is more radio friendly?
Not really. They didn't know what to do with us. They kind of left us to our own devices. It wasn't until we had, a hit in Pepper that they suddenly decided they needed to tell us, what to do and how to do it. But, we had this, Pepper kind of came out of the blue. We were in the studio with producer Steve Thompson, and we had all of our songs worked out and arranged and rehearsed. And we went in to do the final rehearsing in the studio up in Bearsville, New York. And right before we started the heavy part of making the album, producer Steve Thompson said, "I think we need one more song." And we were kind of dumbfounded at first. And I was like, "What do you mean, one more song?" And he was like, and then he turned to me and said, "Paul, play a riff and I'll record it." And so I was like, what key? And he said G. And I played a riff in G. And that became the start of Pepper. And the next thing I knew, they were coming up with drum loops, and Gibby was in the other room coming up with lyrics. And then later on, we went to Steely Dan's studio in Manhattan, and we were putting down synthesizers and sitars and all this stuff. And it was a blast. It was just like, wow, we're like a real regular band almost here. But we did manage to piss off a lot of our old fan base by having a hit. People didn't understand. They just thought we were selling out, which of course we were.
Mm-hmm.
but also I think for a song like Pepper, I mean, like the whole trip hop scene was big in the mid '90s, and I know I was a fan. I know Gibby was a fan, and I had sort of just made a trip hop album the year before in this band called Drain. So like I had all these stacks of sample CDs and whatnot. It's like I really found Pepper fun to work on, for it's kind of like what I was listening to at home as far as like the beat and the groove and stuff. So just to have like Paul playing his guitar and like and Gibby like with his brilliant vocals. I mean, I love that song. It was really fun to make. But I think for me though, it was just a song. Like the Buttholes have always kind of had. I don't think we ever had one sound. Like we're known for being this heavy, noisy kind of thing. But we've always had different kind of like approaches to songs and experiment with stuff, and we've always been pop fans in a way. So to me, it made sense to do a song like Pepper. But then, like once Pepper became a hit, all of a sudden we were the Pepper Band, and like, oh no, that's not really us,
Was there a moment or an activity that you guys noticed where all of a sudden Pepper was just bigger than was expected, like almost like a holy shit moment?
Well, listening to the radio and hearing it come on a lot, and then I think like the first month it was on the radio, they were doing this thing, which is pick your favorite song, and they would compare two songs, and Pepper was like the winner for like a month straight, and it was pretty funny. It was amusing. It didn't really make sense, but there it was.
I found myself watching MTV just to see Pepper. It was like they were playing like every hour for a while. It's like, wow, there we are. So that was different. That was cool. It's like, okay. I mean, part of being in a band like this, I mean, like, going from like touring in a Chevy Nova to all of a sudden, like not all of a sudden, but gradually working your way up and being on MTV and having an MTV hit. That was kind of fun. I mean, like I feel like we're kind of seeing some kind of reward for like all the years that we kind of toiled in the ditches, or so it was different. It was fun until it became not fun.
No. I imagine you're starting to notice, like, why is Winona Ryder at the show? Or why is, all of a sudden there became this other level of cultural, like, when did Beavis and Butthead start talking about Butthole Surfers?
That was the first Capitol record.
Yeah,
that was in
my room
93.
last night.
Oh,
Yeah, that
Worm
was the
Saloon?
first Capitol record. Yeah, on 93. Who Was in My Room was kind of like the single off the record that did okay, but nothing like Pepper, But it was kind of like a little minor entry into the charts, and MTV played it a little bit.
But we got to work with John Paul Jones.
That sounds so interesting, like unexpected. But so how did John Paul Jones get to enter the picture for Worm Saloon?
We had A-list producers lined up around the block, throwing their hat in the ring to produce our record for Capitol. And, I mean, some really great guys, and any one of them would have been great to work with. But then at the last second, Lee Lust, our A&R guy at Capitol, threw John Paul Jones's name in the ring. And it's like, what? John Paul Jones? It's like, there's no way I'm going to my grave having turned down a chance to work with John Paul Jones. I mean, that was it. So, and that turned out to be a whole lot of fun. And he was great in the studio. He was a whole lot of fun to work with.
So John Paul Jones's name comes up. What did he contribute? Like, what did the band learn, or how did having John Paul Jones involved kind of change the process in the studio?
We'd never really had a producer before. I was kind of the guy that was interested in recording things. So I was always the one with the tape recorder and the microphones and miking things up. And then John Paul Jones came in, and he was a consummate professional as far as a producer goes. He came to Austin and hung out for a week with us in our practice space, and we went over the songs and we jammed out with him. And then then we all picked a studio together to work at, and he showed up at the studio, and he was in the control room for every second of every note that went down on that record, and he was so on top of it. And I kind of learned how to be a producer from John Paul Jones, and I just think the world of that guy.
Yeah, I was really impressed by, like, as Paul was getting at, like how hardworking John Paul Jones was. I mean, like he used to be in Led Zeppelin. You think he'd be kind of some kind of like big time rock star, too cool to actually work. But no, he was like there every second. He was taking copious notes. In my mind, he wasn't trying to change the band and his image or anything like that. But he's just trying to make the songs as concise as they could be, giving us notes and just recording everything as well as he could. And it was thrilling in a way, just to see him like work that hard. And I kind of had to remind myself that's kind of how he got his start in a way, as far as being a studio musician in the '60s. I think he's always taken the studio as a very serious thing, and he carried that mentality, with us. And I was so grateful for it.
Yeah. Okay. So he was on point all the time. He wasn't just kind of leaning back or just showing up occasionally. He was involved in every moment of that record.
He was leading the charge. He's a really great producer and a fun guy to be around too. He's super nice and has a lot of fun stories about Led Zeppelin, and we drank a lot of whiskey. Before we showed up to the studio in Marin County, a place called The Site, they asked us what we wanted to drink, and I was like, Well, I'd like a bottle of Lagavulin 16-year-old single malt scotch. And they asked John Paul Jones, who was a member of the Scotch Whiskey Society, and he said, I'd like a bottle of 16-year-old Lagavulin single malt scotch. So it's like, oh, we got something in common. And so we show up and there's a bottle of scotch on the table. And that night we drank it. And so the next night there were two bottles. And we drank those, and then the third night there was four bottles, and the next thing you know, we've got a $20,000 studio bill for Scotch whiskey, and we were drinking till 4 a.m. But it was all a blast.
Yeah. Is it fair to say that that those studio budgets were different than when you were on Touch and Go?
Okay, yeah. I don't remember ever actually having a studio budget for Touch and Go.
You want some water? There's a faucet out back if you need a drink.
Yeah, we kind of saved up our money from touring and bought tape machines and microphones and wires and that kind of stuff, and sort of turned our wherever we were living at the time into a home studio and recorded a lot that way.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, that gave you the freedom to kind of take your time with things and be very experimental. I guess when you got to Capitol, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have these bigger budgets, you're still able to experiment a lot, but it just becomes very expensive at that point.
Yeah, those were expensive studios, and so we felt like we needed to have our stuff worked out before we walked in the door, and we did.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly that first album on Capitol, Independent Worm Saloon. I mean, we had, I think, 15, 18 songs like that we wanted to record, like boom, boom, boom. We just went in and plowed through it as best we could. But I think the second album is kind of more like a hybrid, where we had some songs worked out, some were kind of like we can figure it out later in the studio, and then like the third album that's being released now that we're talking about, that was like kind of totally written at home. So we kind of went backwards in a way. I mean, we started off with like a big name producer in a studio recording songs, boom, boom, boom. And then as we got more comfortable, I think, with working with Capitol Records, I think we kind of went back to our let's make it up as we go along kind of way, which again, was fun until it wasn't fun.
So coming off of Electric Larry Land, and of course you've had the hit, you've been all over television, you start recording what became After the Astronaut. Actually, was it called After the Astronaut at the beginning, or?
At some point during the studio, we kind of came up with that name, and I was a big fan of the artist Mark Ryden, and I was in the studio and decided, hey, we're on a major label. Let's hire Mark Ryden to paint an album cover for us. And I pulled out a big ballpoint pen and a napkin and kind of drew a sketch on a napkin of some Indian squaws around a campfire holding a little alien baby, and sent it to Mark Ryden, and he did this beautiful painting, and he did front and back, and it was gorgeous. And then we got dropped, and next thing you know, that painting got turned into a Marcy Playground album cover or something like that.
And that's why it's After the Astronaut. So the astronaut is the father of this baby.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Sort of. That was the concept. I mean, we were never trying to make a whole lot of sense.
So this re-release, it's not going to have that cover because obviously that cover's been used, yeah? Yeah,
we had to start all over, and obviously we didn't have a budget to hire Mark Ryden to do another album cover for us. And so we use art that Gibby and I had been working on. I've got some stupid app on my iPad where I can doodle with my finger and make little finger paintings, and that's the album cover. And then Gibby's got some of his watercolors on the inside, and they're beautiful. And it's more us really that way, because I like it when we do everything, the music and the production and the mixing and the album covers. It's fun.
So when it comes to album covers, you guys are pretty involved. I'm assuming Electric Larry Land was something the band came up with, that cover, yeah?
I think Gibby knew an artist, and Gibby was in charge of that.
Okay.
That was the one with the pencil in the ear, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that worked.
And PCP EP, that was you drawing it, wasn't it, Paul?
Yeah, that was a big pen on typing paper. We needed an album cover, and I had literally 15 minutes to come up with one, and so I did. And then, about a year ago, we put out a live album called Live at the Leather Fly. And I used AI to come up with an image of a leather fly. And that got a lot of flack. Next thing I find out that kids are really against AI, and a lot of people just hated it and refused to buy the record because they weren't going to buy something with an AI album cover because we put
It's not a real leather fly.
And the thing I heard most was, we put a graphic artist, out of work by doing that. And it's like, wait a minute, I'm the graphic artist for one, and two, I spent 2 days making that leather fly as opposed to 15 minutes working on that clown doodle for PCPBEP that you have tattooed on your fucking neck. I don't know.
Yeah, you can't please everyone. So after The Astronaut, was there any pressure going into it? Because you guys are coming off of this big hit, this big album. You're starting to record again. Is the relationship with the label kind of changing? What sort of narratives are you starting to hear from them about their expectations of what's to come?
They kind of were hands off when we were in the studio making it, other than Gary Gersh heard one of the songs and wanted to use it in one of the Hellraiser movies, or King, I can't remember. Was that the name of the movie they wanted? The guy with horns that had been cut off. And
I forget.
At the time, I was a little pissed off at Capitol for not having a follow-up single to Pepper, and I felt slighted by that. And so I was like, you want to take one of our songs and promote a soundtrack album for a movie, and as opposed to promoting ourselves? And I was against it, and I think that kind of started a rift between us and Capitol Records, and I feel bad. That was probably a stupid thing on my part to not have that song in the Hellraiser movie. Then it was cool, we finished the record, and I think it was originally mixed by Chris Lord-Alge, who's like one of the big hotshot mixers of all time. And Capitol dug it, and they got the artwork done, and then they made up promotional cassette tapes. That's what they did back in those days. They sent out promo cassette tapes, and they sent out promo cassette tapes. And then the next thing I knew, we were dropped. And I think it had a lot to do with our manager at the time returning to his old heroin habit. He'd been sober for many years, and then he wasn't, and then we were dropped from the label. And so
there are promos that are pressed up, and it was called The Last Astronaut at the time, I believe.
Was it? I get confused. I thought it was After the Astronaut. Did I get it all wrong?
No. Well, the promo itself, I think is titled, it's The Last Astronaut. There's some CDs and cassettes that were sequenced and mastered.
Oh, then we should have been calling our new record The Last Astronaut then. I kind of fucked up.
Oh.
But after the Astronaut always made more sense to me, that's
especially with the
cover
too.
Well, I know at the time we went back and forth as to which is better, The Last Astronaut or After the Astronaut. I couldn't keep it straight anymore, and like after a few decades, I think we all get a pass, So After the Astronaut it is. So I'm down with that.
I like the name After the Astronaut too. Yeah, it's fine. But that's been the lore all these years as well, because the album's kind of gained its own, mystery and community around that, kind of seeking for more information. Yeah.
And we live in an age of Ancient Aliens. I don't know if you watch that show, but I fucking love that show, Ancient Aliens. And slowly but surely, the truth is coming out about the alien presence on Earth and all the different aliens that have visited us and created us and have fucked with us and all that stuff. So it's fun to be wound up in that. The truth is going to come out.
Will it?
It's starting to. I know old Dumpy Boy just released some UFO files, although I haven't heard anything shocking or exciting about it. So,
yeah.
But we'll probably get the truth before we get the truth about Epstein.
I don't know what to believe anymore. We're in such a post-truth world that it's,
I'm just so excited that we finally got the Earhart files. That's what I was really hoping for.
Have they found more than a piece of her shin bone yet?
Yeah, what, they find some shin bone?
Yeah. Years ago, I think they had a what do you call it? They went to that island. They found a bottle, a bit of shin bone. I think part of a jaw. That was years ago, but yeah, they're kind of figuring out that she landed on that really small island in the South Pacific.
Right, right. I actually stopped caring about her, I guess, back in the 70s.
Hmm.
It was an amusing story for a while, but it's like, fuck, just leave it alone.
So we do have the mystery of the last astronaut. Now those, I don't know if you know, those promo CDs, those cassettes, they kind of go for big money on the secondary market. Are you aware of that?
No.
Yeah, I mean upwards of like 800, $1,000.
God damn, I should have kept my box of cassettes instead of taking them to the dump.
Yeah. So the promos were made. I don't know. Do you know if any vinyl was created, even test pressings or anything?
No, I don't know. I don't think it got. I don't think they
Yeah.
did test pressings back then. That vinyl was not a thing at that point. That was,
Yeah, it was strictly CDs in the '90s. Independent Worm Saloon and Electric Land had vinyl editions kind of after the fact. Like CD came first, and then like when there was some demand for it, then they did like a vanity pressing of some vinyl. But back in the '90s, it was all strictly CDs.
and
So
cassette.
yeah, there were no. Yep. But no test pressings back then. It was all CD reference discs you would
Right.
get.
So those CDs got out, or those cassettes got out, and then the label dropped the band, dropped the album. Like, what was the sequence? Like, how did that kind of come together?
They just put the quietus on us, but they didn't release us from our contract. They just said we're not putting your record out, and then we entered a period of years of limbo that was the worst period in our lives. Couldn't put out a record with anybody else. Couldn't, it's like it was awful.
Hmm.
Nobody should have to go through that, but I guess that was karma
Yeah,
coming
I mean,
coming back to bite us in the ass for being the Butthole Surfers for so many years.
So, without getting into specifics or anything you can't discuss, what's the practical reality for that kind of dispute for a band that's trying to control its own catalog?
You just sit and wait. We got bailed out finally when Hollywood Records bought out the project. They had to give Capitol big bucks to buy the project, and because they did, they wanted the record to be different than what Capitol had, so we had to go back and rework it and remove songs that they didn't see any value in, and add songs that like a song co-written with Kid Rock, and which you know that's just
yeah,
that was not us. And it was a painful process, and we none of us liked that finished product, and it was painful to do and painful to listen to, and so, but it got us out of Capitol, and we were free to do whatever we wanted. But by then we were kind of scattered to the wind anyway.
I mean, I think in retrospect, I kind of don't blame Capitol in a way because the band was a mess because we were having a war with our manager, and the manager was always the interface between ourselves and the label. And when the manager starts saying negative things about the band to the label, and I'm sure saying negative things to the label itself, I'm sure like we were like way too much of a headache for Capitol to even deal with. But they're also a business, so instead of just like releasing us from a contract, they held on to the contract but also refused to release the record. So like it was kind of like a stalemate for us. They refused to release a record of ours, refused to let us off the contract, and we were stuck. We were doomed. And that Hollywood Records time, while I wasn't happy with the final record, at least we fucking made a record. Like I didn't know if we'd ever make a record again. At least Hollywood came and like bought us off our contract with Capitol, released the record, and we became free agents again in a way.
Mm.
So I mean, I was grateful to Hollywood that they could make it happen, but at that point, like the well was already kind of poisoned in a way. I mean, like we went through years of just being miserable. We're like it wasn't fun to be in a band, and it wasn't fun to create music in a way. And like we made a record that we liked, and it just got shuttered away, or rather, it got changed into like a a far weaker version than what we had in mind originally. Say the label added Kid Rock touches to it and stuff. So it was a drag, but we kind of had to put our tails between our legs and just kind of get with the program if we wanted to be a band again. And just kind of what we had to do.
Yeah.
So there you
go. Still very grateful to Hollywood Records for bailing us out. That was really, really good of them, and it helped us out tremendously. And then later, I was going through storage space and stumbled across the old 2-inch multi-track master tapes of After the Astronaut, and it's like a bell went off in my head. It's like, wow, I can, remix these old songs, the way they originally sounded, and we could put this out. And to their credit, Hollywood said yes, we could do that. They owned the rights to that album, but they were very gracious to let us, put out the original version. So that they were very cool about all of that.
Oh wow! So
and we got to make a cool video for "The Shame of Life," which is the song co-written with Kid Rock. It was a high dollar video. I think some guy that had won a Grammy for his, not a Grammy, an Academy Award for, what do you call it, filmography or something. He was the guy that did the camera work, and he was
cinematography.
He was a big shot, and you could tell he was not happy to be lowering himself to be working with the Butthole Surfers, but he did a really good job. And we had these men dressed up in giant squirrel suits, and these guys were in the original Planet of the Apes movies. They were some of the apes, and so that was just a lot of fun. And I think there were like 2 or 3 live pigs on the set, and we got to hang out with pigs and.
So I guess Hollywood was very keen to try to recoup, because I would imagine their negotiations with Capitol, they got squeezed a fair bit. So they were keen to try to get something out of that with Weird Revolution.
Absolutely, and I doubt they ever did recuperate, because they had to shell out some big bucks, and they were the only label willing to do it. And we got to work with producer Rob Cavallo, who was fresh off of winning, like producer of the year at the Grammys for his work with, I don't know if it was Green Day or Sheryl Crow or something like that, but got to work with him, although he was a totally different experience to work with than John Paul Jones. John Paul Jones was there for every note that went down, and Rob Cavallo would come in once a week for 10 minutes and listen for a few minutes and go, okay, I'm off to my daughter's, recital. I'll see you next week. Which kind of left us like, okay, we're supposed to change the record, but it's up to us to do it, what we don't want to do in the first place, and which one of us is going to do that, and a little weird.
Sucks the energy out of it.
And there were some tense moments in the studio, as soon as it would start to get fun, something would happen, and then it wasn't fun again. And I was just so glad when that was over with.
You guys were so tight for so many years throughout the history of the band, and then in this period, it must have really stress tested everyone's relationships. Yeah,
we had our own issues, and those crept into the studio. But beautiful thing is we're still tight. We're still a tight band. We love each other like brothers, except for King. He's a dick.
It's true. It's true.
I'm just kidding.
I'm trying. I'm trying really hard. I'm trying. But no, I realized a while back that I've spent more time with the band members than I have with my own family, and because of that, they're closer to me than my own family is. I kind of grew up. We all kind of grew up together. And so yeah, they are my brothers. We have each other's backs. So I'm really grateful to have spent so much time with Gibby and Paul. They're just totally amazing people. It's like I feel like I won the punk rock lottery when I was asked to join the band in '83 or whatever. So, I love these guys. But yeah, we went through a lot, and having the whole like coda into Hollywood era kind of being a coda to it was a drag, because up to that point it'd been an amazing ride. It'd been really fun, and like every year was like something new. And this turned into like just a legal quagmire, and it was just a drag. It was not fun at that point.
Yeah. But this 2026 version of After the Astronaut, or The Last Astronaut, whatever, how different is that from the 1998 version?
It's not very different at all. It's remixed, but I tried to do my best to remix it in the original way. I didn't add anything. I didn't take away anything. It's
Mm-hmm.
the same song order and everything. So it's pretty much the original deal.
Okay. And when you fired up those 2-inch tapes, was there any other information on those? Did you find any outtakes or anything of interest there?
No, not really. Yeah, I mean it was pretty concise. We went into Arlen's studio in Austin. We'd been working on songs at home, and we all had our samples and our bits and pieces, and we kind of knew where those bits and pieces were going to go. So we went into a studio and just kind of put it all together, and then added some guitars and keyboards and vocals and other drum loops, and King had this device that could intercept people's cell phone calls, and so we got some vocals for a song, just turning it on and recording people talking on the phone, and that was fun. That's my favorite song on the record, actually.
Which song is that?
I Don't Have a Problem.
Okay.
These women, they got knives and daggers. I always like it because to me that guy sounds just like Jim from Reverend Horton Heat. I could just imagine him saying those things.
Right.
At what point did you guys become aware of the Simpsons Butthole Surfers reference with Rod and Todd?
Wow, that was a
Yeah. Back then, I watched The Simpsons every Sunday when it came on, and like when
me
it came
too.
on live, I saw it live. Yeah, so it's like, whoa, okay, we're almost big time. We're almost big time. It didn't say Butthole Surfers; it went Butthole. It's like, okay, so close, so close. Still,
Yeah, I think
I'll
that was
take it.
that was that was not too long after the Chili Peppers were on The Simpsons, but they were really on The Simpsons. They were all like
Yeah.
playing their songs in their underwear and all that stuff. So we were almost like the Chili Peppers there for a second. But the cool thing is
The
that
story of our career.
the guy that worked on The Simpsons that's responsible for getting our T-shirt on that show, his son is one of the producers of our documentary that's coming out this summer, and Simon's young and just incredibly smart, talented guy, and he's working on our movie, and he's like, "Yeah, that was my dad that got that T-shirt on there." So it's like, wow, that was just so cool.
I'm a surfer. So the movie, The Whole Truth and Nothing But, it's been premiering. It's been showing at different locations on screen. Do you know when it will be available for streaming for folks around the world?
This summer,
Summer? Okay. Uh,
that's I talked to one of the producers last night, and he said to expect some news next week.
ooh.
So I'm teetering.
Nice.
I'm teetering with anticipation. I know it's going to have at least some form of a theatrical release. As far as I know, the Alamo Drafthouse chain, which is like 40 some odd theaters, they're gonna show it. And I don't know if they're the only theater, but it will get some kind of a theatrical release, and then some kind of streaming after that, or I don't know how it works. But this summer is going to be the summer for our documentary, and I'm really excited about that because the response to that documentary has been tremendous.
You guys have been undergoing this renaissance over the last 18 months or so. There's new reissues coming out. You've got After the Astronaut, the documentary.
It's been a trip because let me tell you, after Pepper came out, we lost a lot of our original fan base over it. All of a sudden, I'd go out in public and people would turn away from me, and I just felt like we were stinkers, like. And as of late, I've been feeling a lot of love. There's, we go to these screenings at film festivals, and there's mobs of people wanting autographs and pictures and all that stuff, and it's just like, wow, we're cool again. It feels great.
Well, it's just because like we're old now, and like, oh, they're so old, they're so cute, and they're still alive. Oh, let's give them a hand. They're still taking an air, you know. I remember those guys back in the '80s. Oh, and they're still breathing. Oh,
Some
isn't
of
that
us are still
nice?
alive. You know, that's
Well,
Well,
yeah.
during the 5 years of the making of that movie. I believe five people that are in the movie have perished, and which is really sad. And then Rob Reiner and his wife perished, and that our documentary was the last movie they watched before they were murdered by their son. It's horrifying and sad, and but it's just another weird fact about the movie. Um,
oh,
the investor Derek Rossi, who paid for most of the production of the movie, he was friends with Rob Reiner and an investor in Castle Rock Entertainment, and he finally got Rob Reiner to watch the documentary, and he watched it with his wife the day that they were murdered, and sent a voicemail to Derek, just going on about how great the documentary was and congratulating him, and saying it's one of the best music documentaries they'd ever seen. And then a few hours later, they were no longer with us. And it's
oh, geez. And that's high praise from the guy who made Spinal Tap, who knows music documentaries, right?
yeah, I mean, everybody loved that guy. It's just
Yeah. Oh dear. But it's actually been very nice watching the press junket you guys have been on, seeing the band together again, knowing that you guys are getting along, seeing the authentic smiles, and going back to the point that you guys are still alive and taking in air. That wasn't always a bet that everyone would make, knowing the band from the early days.
I would not have taken that. If I'd known I was going to live this long, I would have lived different.
Oh, jeez. So you've got the documentary coming. How involved were you guys in the documentary, or were you kind of shown a version late in the game and kind of had to learn what it was about then?
Mostly, it was picking the right person to do it. And we've known director Tom Stern since the '80s, and we'd worked with him before, making a short movie video. And a lot of people had approached us over the years wanting to do a documentary, and we were always kind of like lukewarm. But Tom Stern came along, and he brought it up, and it's like it just all made sense at that point. It's like, yeah, you're the guy to do it. And then once he got involved, we just kind of like sat back and let him do his thing. He interviewed us a bunch of times, and he put in a lot of work, into making it. And then after it was made, he's put in a lot of work getting it in film festivals and going to the film festivals and doing Q&As, and just he's an amazing guy and super
He,
talented.
he absolutely is. He spent 5 years to make this. 5 years, and he spent like years like recording us year after year, interview after interview after interview. So we kind of knew what was happening, but like they spent all that time making it. I think only a friend or someone who's really invested in trying to tell the story correctly would spend that much time doing it. So he spent years working on it. And when he finally got accepted into South by Southwest for the big premiere, his house burned
No.
down. It's like,
His
huh.
house and his studio and all the puppets and set things that he had built for the
Yeah.
movie, and he lost it all. Bless his heart.
Thankfully, the film was saved in the cloud. So like, like the footage was saved. I mean, as far as the edited stuff, but yeah, he lost everything.
Oh, geez.
And that was the world's, giving him a thank you for working 5 years for the Butthole Surfers. So never work with us. Only bad things will happen.
So it's fair to say that on the Blu-ray release, there's not going to be as much extra footage as one hoped earlier in the project.
No, there's going to be a ton of extra footage.
No, yeah.
He could make an entire series if he wanted to, and he's talked about doing that.
Hmm.
But the Blu-ray will have a lot of extra stuff. He had to struggle to get it down to under 2 hours.
Oh, geez.
I kept trying.
The editor did an amazing job on the project. How you take years of footage and winnow it down to a 90-minute film roughly, it's pretty amazing. So he did a great job.
Yeah, the editing is where became magic because he was telling this
Yeah.
story. There have been documentaries where you show talking head after talking head, and that gets old and boring really quick. But Tom was able to take a snippet of a conversation and then play it off of somebody else's conversation and just one after another until you're both confused and it all makes sense all at the same time. And so I just think he did a fantastic job. And the editing was just I have a whole new respect for editing now. I see what you do with editing, and that's what makes or breaks movies.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything you think the movie, I guess, misses, or an era that maybe was underrepresented that you were thinking maybe deserves a bit more juice?
No, to the contrary, I learned things about my band that I didn't know, and mostly like trauma that Gibby had experienced when he was a very, very young child. And when I first saw, a cut of the movie and realized what Gibby had gone through, and my first response was, Tom, there's no way Gibby's going to let this be in the movie. And Tom was like, no, he's already signed off on it. And I was just so proud of Gibby for being brave enough to tell his story and allow his story to be told. And so, yeah, it covered more than I was expecting. It covered the whole thing.
Tom went deep with he wanted to tell the whole story. I mean, it's called The Whole Truth and Nothing But. And for a band that's always tried to have a bit of secrecy about us, like we never put our pictures on albums. I don't think we ever put our names on our individual names on the records. I think it was kind of like an air of like a question about the band. But like, here's a director saying, "Okay, tell me about the worst trauma of your life, but make it entertaining." And I think it's why it kind of took a few years to try to like kind of hone that down for like someone like me who's like willing and comfortable like talking, say to you, in general. But it's really hard to talk in front of a camera about deep personal stuff. But because we trusted Tom so much and because he was so patient, he was able to extract it over years. And he did a fine job. I
He
mean,
was
really, it's
he
really a
was
testament.
patient and he was persistent. He knew he wanted to get to the bottom of things, and at first he wasn't. And like especially interviewing somebody like Gibby, who you ask Gibby a question, and it becomes an excuse to go off on some weird tangent, and he's always funny and amusing when he does that. But Tom wasn't satisfied with that. He really wanted to get the story behind things, and he didn't stop until he did. And that's to Tom's credit. He got to the core.
Yeah. We had Gibby on the show a couple months ago, and he shared about the doll. He shared some other things, and then he laughs like a maniac. And I was like, okay, is he being true? Like, how is he kind of hanging in this moment?
I realized he told me the story years ago about the doll, and as you said, he laughs. And then the second you hear him laugh, it's like, oh, you're just making that up, It's, and then it's now I realize, no, he wasn't making that up, and he was laughing, but fuck, it hurts,
That was his mechanism for dealing with it. Yeah,
it was, and so I learned a lot about my brother Gibby.
Mm-hmm. What other music documentaries have you seen lately that you really like? There's quite a few coming out.
Well, I saw the Led Zeppelin. I haven't seen hardly any at all, and I want to see Devo, and there's a few others I want to watch, but I just haven't gotten to it. But I did see Led Zeppelin, and I thought it was disappointing compared to ours. It's a great story, and I loved hearing the story about who they were and how they became Led Zeppelin. But you have these three soft-spoken English guys who speak very low, and you have to turn up the volume on your TV all the fucking way just to hear them talk. And then they're playing Whole Lot of Love, and you're getting your head blown off. So I was constantly turning the volume up and down to hear it until I just gave up. But I don't mean to rag on the Led Zeppelin documentary, but it's not as much fun as ours.
I found myself checking my watch a fair bit toward the second half of it. Like,
I was glad when it was over.
Have you seen the Red Cross documentary?
No, that's
I saw
another
it.
one.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, I liked it. It was
Yeah,
good.
we're talking about editing. Andrew Reich just knows how to make those edits and make it
Hmm.
absolutely compelling at just under 90 minutes, which is about all the patience I have these days.
On a similar vibe, did you watch the Bill Bartell documentary that Dave Markey
Yeah,
made?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, a really great story. I mean, like, it's music adjacent, I guess. He was hanging out with Red Cross and like all the LA punk stuff. The fact that he had a secret life as a cop and also like what a gay rodeo star, and it's like it kept getting this. It was like a true life story. It kept getting stranger and stranger and stranger. So that was a really good film. I thought good
Yeah.
documentary.
Yeah, no, I agree. Those two are fantastic. Look, I know we're getting ready to wrap up. I'm very keen to understand now you guys have the After the Astronaut album, the documentary, the reissues. There's probably a whole cache of unreleased recordings somewhere. Correct me if I'm wrong. Do you think we're going to start hearing more Butthole Surfers than we have in the last 20 years?
Well, I mentioned finding the old 2-inch tapes of After the Astronaut in their storage locker, and there was a whole bunch of other tapes as well. And so I uh, spent several months transferring a lot of old tapes to digital and putting them into Pro Tools. And there's talk of a box set coming out soon, but God, it's a lot of work, and I don't have a whole lot of work left in me. I've become very lazy in my old age. I like to take naps and I like to ride my bike.
Finally,
So, but at some point, yeah, I'm going to put all that stuff together, and hopefully there'll be a box set that'll have a whole bunch of stuff that nobody's heard before. Everything from live to outtakes, that kind of stuff.
when I look back now and like think about like our van touring days, I mean, like we had all of our possessions in the world in the van because we didn't have a home. We were living out of the van. So of course you have your musical equipment, you have some like crappy clothes, but it seemed like at least like 20% of the van was taken with tapes, just like various tapes that we were carrying around from like place to place in our van because we had nowhere secure to store
Mm-hmm.
them. And I recall at one point when early on when we got towed in San Francisco because we were kind of dumb about the parking rules. I mean, I don't know. We didn't realize that we'd been towed. We thought someone stole the
Oh,
van. And in my head, like, okay, all of our possessions are gone. We can't play anymore because we have no equipment. But also, like, the tapes are gone too. And like, damn, I think that kind of hurt the most. You could always replace the musical instruments. You can always buy crappy clothes, but replacing those tapes was hard. And like through the years, we somehow, despite ourselves, we somehow managed to catalog and keep track of the tapes. And Paul's done a tremendous job trying to make sense of it all. So you know,
wow. Is there
we sure
is there
tried.
any missing piece that just kind of pains you? Like some tape out there had existed at one point, or some moment that you just can't seem to find.
I can't think of it. It's been more like the opposite, where it's like I stumbled across something that I just completely forgot about, and then I was like, "Oh wow, that's actually really fucking cool."
Mm-hmm.
So, no, I'm amazed at the number of years that got represented in the tape vault. There's just tons of stuff, and I got work to do.
Yeah, no nap time today.
When I first joined the Buttholes in '83, Gibby and Paul more or less were kind of living in a studio. I mean, like there was a proper studio called Boss Studios,
We were
and
living in the tool
uh,
shed behind the studio.
and whenever like there wasn't a paying customer, Gibby and Paul would find a way to record. It's like early on, the Buttholes were playing around in the studio, like making sounds in the studio that amused them. And that is such a atypical way for a band to start. Usually, if you're a new band, you might have like your 5 or 10 songs. You go in the studio, you kind of like plow through it. It isn't until later in your life that you can begin like kind of fucking around the studio. Paul and Gibby were doing it from almost day one. It seems to me like fucking around the studio, coming up with cool stuff and recording it, and they had the tapes to prove it. So
Hmm.
it, I'm impressed.
Oh, phenomenal. Well, look, guys, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk all about Butthole Surfers and After the Astronaut and the documentary. This new version of After the Astronaut, that's going to be on Latino Bugger Vale Records? No?
No,
Sunset Boulevard Records.
Oh, okay. Excellent. I'll put...
Yeah, we got a label and a guy that I talked to at the label, and we got a couple of videos out for it already for Jet Fighter and for Imbuya, and artist Ron English has made 2 videos for us, and then the same guy that made the video for Jet Fighter, he's doing another video for us, and then a friend of mine, Gus Engelhorn, is making a video for us in Super 8, which I'm really excited about. So there's going to be a lot of videos for songs for this record, and so it's really exciting. It's like we're a band again.
Any prospects of shows at all? Is that on the horizon, or is that off the table?
No. We did a screening at the Egyptian Theater in Los Angeles early on for the documentary, and we did a Q&A afterwards. But we also did a surprise show of playing 3 songs at the screening, and that's probably the last time we'll play. But I shouldn't say never, because you never know. But yeah, I'd be happy if we were done with all that.
No
it's
more,
a lot of work.
No more fire symbols. Nothing happening. Nothing like that.
I have post-traumatic stress disorder from those days. I mean, if you meant, and we're getting offers for big money to play shows, and just every time somebody brings it up, all of a sudden I've got a week worth of nightmares that I'm waking up in a cold sweat, and it's there was shotguns and belching flames and mayhem every night, and it took a toll on me. I'm really enjoying a nice, peaceful life with my cat and my bicycle and the naps.
Very good. Well, guys, thanks again. It's great to see the victory lap that the band is doing these days. Thanks again. I really do appreciate it. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and look forward to hearing all the interesting stuff you guys find in the vault on those tapes, and the continued sharing of unheard Butthole Surfers recordings.
Well, thanks for having us on. Thank you.
Awesome.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
guys. Cheers. Oh, that's awesome. I've always wanted to have Paul and King on the show, and I got them both at once. Incredible conversation. I had a great time. Thank you guys for making the time. And of course, everyone else for listening. Again, After the Astronaut is available June 2026, sunsetboulevardrecords.com. Links are in this episode page. And of course, we're absolutely hanging to see what's up with the documentary. I'm sure that news will come out shortly. And that's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Thank you so much for tuning in, especially those of you who are supporting the show through our Patreon page, patreon.com/Vinyl Guide. Up there you get early access and high-resolution versions of these interviews, as well as the warm and fuzzy feeling you're helping support this podcast. Of course, those of you who are sharing on social media and leaving us positive reviews, that's a huge help too. And we'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, you all behave yourselves. And thanks again for listening to the Vinyl Guide podcast. Cheers.